Hello, welcome to the Fed Trend Show. This week I want to talk about the debt ceiling situation that's going on. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the debt ceiling debate and how it differs from government shutdowns and continuing resolutions or budget gaps or budget negotiations. Here's what I'm going to say. I think regardless of what's going on, it's really important to communicate and have a plan for employees, because most of them are not going to be focused on what the nuances of the debt ceiling or a budget negotiation is going to be. They're going to be focused on, how does this affect me, and am I going to get paid and get to continue to come to work? Now, since about 1980, there have been like 20 government shutdowns. Some employees have been through some of these. Some of them are brand new to government contracting and have never had the idea that if the government closes down for some reason, that they might not get paid. Here's what also happens. These employees are directly engaged with federal employees, and the federal employees are getting information from government HR that directly affects them. Are they going to get paid? Are they going to accrue leave if there's a shutdown? Are they going to eventually get paid if they end up missing a paycheck? Contractor rules are completely different, and they're very nuanced, depending on what agency they're supporting, whether they're essential, what the contract type is. So there's some planning and some communication that needs to happen. I wanted to go over some tips for what to do if you're a government contractor and all of this debt ceiling situation is going on. First off, if you're in BD, if you're in business development, what does that mean? Here's the thing. The sales cycle in government contracting is so long that debt ceiling, no debt ceiling, budget, no budget, shutdown, no shutdown, it's going to be months before an RFP gets awarded. This might delay an RFP release, potentially, maybe, but don't really do anything different. If you're in BD or you're in capture, you're tracking opportunities, you're trying to write proposals and win business, I don't see this as being a material impact. You can have some big strategic discussion about whether this is going to fundamentally change the budget level at some agency, long term, but that doesn't generally change the day-to-day capture activities that are going on. So nothing there. If you're in ops, first off, you need to know by employee type what really are the differences for each group of employees, because you want to give focused communication to different organizations in different programs in your company. So are they going to have essential and non-essential employees? Are if people are on-site versus off-site, on-site employees can't show up for work if the government is shut down, which means they definitely can't bill anything generally. So the other thing is seniority of employees. If people have not been a government contractor before, they've probably not been through this before. So keeping in mind across the roster of employees that you would need to communicate with, who's been through this before and who hasn't, because that's going to significantly impact the kind of emotional response that comes out of this. So specific steps to take. Number one, plan to communicate. Establish some sort of a town hall. Send out an all-hands email. And you can split that into different units as you need to, because if you've got different programs, you can come up with your plan for who's going to communicate to whom, but you need to do that now. The next thing is ask the customer. In the event of a shutdown, I've had all different customers over the years that they had varied levels of, here's exactly what happens if there's a shutdown, here's who works, and here's who doesn't. And then I've had some customers who've said, we honestly don't know, we're going to have to ask. So start that process as soon as you can. The next thing is the company can plan for what I would call discretionary policies. Things like, if the government shuts down, are we going to allow employees to maybe charge overhead and take mandatory training, or to invest in training for things like Microsoft certifications, PMP certifications, something like that? Or is it not going to be possible for the company? Because what usually drives that is, how much of the company's revenue do we think is tied to shutdown employees? There was a point, one of the last shutdowns, like 95% of my billable employees were all able to continue charging. So those that were not, we had much more flexibility to decide what we were going to do and authorize training and things like that. Whereas if it had been a 50-50 type impact, we would not have been able to afford as a company to cover anybody on overhead for any kind of training. So that specifically matters. There are also going to be questions about things like vacation donations. Are you going to have people that are not impacted, and certainly, something that we've done before, or companies that I've been at, the executives would donate their vacation to cover some amount of time for the employees that were impacted by it. Those are decisions that a company can make. They're free to do that, but those are things that usually take a lot of discussion, a lot of planning, and you have to have the financials tied to it to make those decisions. So getting started on that early and trying to figure out who's going to be impacted informs that decision. The last tip I would give from a communication standpoint is don't think that the employees are not concerned about the debt ceiling discussion now or any of these budget, continuing resolution, government shutdown conversations. They always are. If they haven't asked, it's just because they don't know what to ask, or they don't want to appear alarmed, or they're getting their information from somebody else. Most of the times where I've had government shutdowns, I've eventually had some attrition on those programs over time where they said, I decided to go into commercial because it's more stable because we don't have these shutdowns. Now, realistically, government contracts are generally very stable, but these kinds of shutdowns are scary and can have a long-lasting impact on employees. So the big message is communicate. Don't think just because it's in the news and it seems like a deal might get worked out, don't think you don't have to say something. So whatever level in whatever company, make sure that the messaging gets out and tell everybody kind of what your plan is. Thank you very much for watching this episode. See you next time.